Creature is one of my favorite kaiju series that I've read so far. I love the human race versus kaiju concept, and seeing how regular human beings survive such a monstrous threat in their food chain is just so interesting. So the first 4 volumes were personally just really awesome to go through, and when I dropped my video, I was hoping y'all would like it too. Sadly though, the series does have a lot of mixed reviews and mentions that if I just keep on going, I'll know why. So curiosity may just kill the cat right now, because today we're gonna go over the next 4 volumes and see where this series really falls.
But if you guys want to see more anime content like this one, then why not go down and hit that subscribe button.
And without further ado, let's get on with the video. The volume begins with Miku in Tokyo, snapping a picture at Tokyo Tower before texting her friends, Akira and Eiji, and then leaving the city. She heads to her hometown, Hino City, where she reunites with Eiji's younger brother, Kenji, whom she hasn't seen in 2 years. Kenji, while happy to see her, questions why she's here. She explains she's on a school trip and wanted to check in with her old friends. Suddenly, an earthquake strikes Tachikawa City, triggering an alarm and reports of a massive collapse. Army trucks arrive at the Tama monorail station, and a wall rapidly forms, sealing off the entire area. Civilians from Tachikawa are evacuated through a gate in the wall, but the atmosphere turns chaotic as those outside demand answers. An officer fires into the air, asserting order. Kenji snaps a photo, despite Miku urging him to focus on contacting his brother. However, Kenji brushes off her concerns, convinced that everything will resolve soon. Oddly though, the news glosses over the disaster, shifting to trivial stories about cute dogs and pets. Miku tries to contact Akira and Eiji but gets no response. Staying at Kenji's house, she notices the media blackout surrounding Tachikawa and suspects something sinister. Kenji too grows suspicious. Walls that size just don't appear overnight. He reveals a photo sent by a friend showing a massive silhouette looming over the city. Rumors of a war between humans and monsters circulate, and Kenji becomes determined to investigate. Miku is furious, accusing him of being reckless and uncaring about his brother. Kenji snaps, expressing frustration as always being compared to Eiji. Defiant, Miku decides to breach the wall herself to find her friends. Kenji begrudgingly helps by distracting the guards at the station, allowing them to sneak onto the train tracks. As officers pursue them, the two run onto the tracks and then leap into a river, narrowly escaping. As the river aggressively pushes them, Kenji grabs onto land and pulls him and Miku out of the river. Walking around an abandoned neighborhood, they overhear soldiers discussing a special creature and a crashed helicopter. Hidden nearby, they witness dead bodies being loaded into the trucks under the ruse of a rescue operation. An officer confronts them, and they flee, reaching the edge of a trench where, on the other side, is filled with destruction caused by kaijus. The two hide under a bridge as something approaches them in the water. A small, weak centipede monster appears out of the water, likely one of the samples the soldiers mention. The creature is fragile, but before they can act, the officer reappears, pointing his gun at them. Kenji grabs the centipede to use it as a shield. The officer demands to hand it over, but Kenji and Miku back up towards the walls. Kenji and Miku reach a bridge where the walls are nearby, while the officer still has his gun pointed at them. The officer says to forget the mission, and says the most important thing to do is to eliminate all threats. However, as he's distracted, the creature wakes up and attacks his face. The officer overpowers the creature and tries to kill it, but before he could, another officer shoots him straight in the head. The new officer says that he was causing too much chaos and asks for the sample back. Kenji looks like he's about to hand it over, but instead throws it over the railing on the bridge. Miku and Kenji take the opportunity to jump off the railing as well, as the officer shoots at them while calling for backup. Miku and Kenji reach the wall and swim under it to escape. Back at Kenji's house, they secure the creature in a cage, planning their next move. Miku is distraught, fearing for her family and friends. Kenji tells Miku to go back home, but she can't just do nothing with her friends in danger. Kenji screams at her that it's too dangerous. He's going to sell the monster to the mass media and expose what's happening in Tachikawa to the world. Miku gets a call from her mother in Kyoto, asking if she could come home. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake. Miku's mother looks up to see a giant kaiju with a massive eyeball coming out of the ground. The ground begins to deteriorate and Miku's mom falls with the debris. Different kinds of creatures crawl out of the hole, including a massive 6-armed insect-like kaiju with a giant eyeball in his chest, looming over Kyoto. They prepare to head to a TV station on bikes as a group of army helicopters fly past them. They arrive at a TV station in Kaiju City and meet up with some of Miku's classmates, ready to take a tour of the station. During the guided tour, security recognizes them as fugitives and calls for backup. Kenji calls on the guide asking if they could go to the news station. However, the guide says that the news station is not a part of the tour and continues on. Suddenly, the centipede monster awakens, and Kenji and Miku run off to try to retie its restraints. The centipede breaks free and runs off. Miku and Kenji run after it, but it gets interrupted by one of the boys in the tour group. He says if they're in trouble, then he can help them. Kenji yells at Miku to leave him, but Miku goes up to him and says she wants him to capture something. A one-eyed creature with a lot of fangs, and if they leave it alone, then terrible things will happen. The boy doesn't really understand, but Miku yells at him to hurry. The three split up while we cut to a studio recording a TV show. Chaos ensues as the creature attacks a studio participant on live television, horrifying the audience. The boy is in the bathroom and sees blood dripping on the ground. He looks up and he sees the centipede hanging from its tail. Its body opens up, revealing rows of fangs, and it launches itself onto the boy's face. The volume ends with Miku searching for the centipede when she hears something walking in the hallway, only to see her friend transformed into a horrific fusion of him and the centipede monster. Ichijo, visibly distressed, approaches Miku, begging for help. He complains that the creature is hurting him and that his body feels unbearably hot. Two officers arrive, catching his attention. He pleads with them to remove the creature, but one officer is astonished, noting that the sample has merged with a person and now it has become far more valuable. Without hesitation, the officer raises his gun towards him, but Ichijo fights back, struggling as he exclaims that his body is moving on its own. The second officer fires his weapon, but he retaliates in a horrific display of strength, shoving his hand into the officer's mouth and ripping his jaws clean off, splitting the man in half. Miku, terrified, turns and runs, but Ichijo gives chase. As she sprints past some workers, she warns them about the creature, but Ichijo mercilessly kills them all as he barrels past. Just as he's about to attack Miku, Kenji intervenes, striking him with a rifle. Ichijo falls back and begins crying, questioning why are they trying to kill him. Overwhelmed with emotion, he knocks Kenji to the ground and turns his blame towards Miku, accusing her of bringing the centipede monster to him. Suddenly, the creature with him opens its mouth and starts convulsing violently as the centipede tears itself off his body, killing him. Miku and Kenji are left in shock, breaking down as they blame themselves for all of the deaths that have occurred. A group of officers arrive and secure the sample. Recognizing Miku and Kenji, the officers place them under arrest. However, before they can take further action, the ground begins to tremble. A massive creature emerges from the water, a barnacle-like kaiju with multiple eyes and a kraken-like mouth. The officers panic, questioning why the creature has arrived so early. They contact headquarters reporting a breach at the Daiba site, and receive orders to initiate Operation Case D, or the Spear. As the barnacle kaiju moves towards the city, the officers release Miku and Kenji, preparing for the operation. However, the officers privately acknowledge that the creature's exposure to the public is a significant risk, as they plan to eliminate all eyewitnesses along with the kaiju. Kenji tries to snap Miku out of her despair, but she remains paralyzed with grief. Frustrated, he slaps her and tells her that she must survive to see Akira and Eiji again. The two make their way to the exit of the TV station, where a crowd has gathered. Two workers block the exit, refusing to let anyone leave. Kenji grabs a chair and smashes the barricade, allowing everyone to escape. Outside, Miku's classmates find her and Kenji, panicking as the barnacle kaiju approaches the station. Suddenly, massive walls burst from the ground, crushing Miku's schoolmates and enclosing the kaiju and the city within. The kaiju attacks the wall, but hidden machine gun turrets in the Ferris wheel open fire. In retaliation, the kaiju uses an arm-mounted blaster to destroy the Ferris wheel. Meanwhile, a massive metallic spear is deployed near the kaiju. It is revealed to be an atomic bomb, which detonates, obliterating everything within the walls. A helicopter surveys the aftermath, observing the charred kaiju collapsing to the ground, confirming the mission's success. Unbeknownst to the officers, Kenji and Miku had escaped the blast on a boat. The captain of the boat ferries the survivors to a nearby pier. On the way, they see people attempting to leave via a bridge, but the structure suddenly collapses. The bridge nearly crushes the boat, but the captain floors it just in time to evade the disaster. The collapse wasn't caused by the blast, but the officers, who arrive on a large boat, demanding the survivors to return. The captain refuses, pushing the engine to its limit to escape. The officers open fire with mounted turrets, killing many passengers. Desperate, the captain orders everyone to jump into the ocean as the officers' boat crashes straight into theirs. Tragically, only 6 people survived. The captain, devastated, feels disappointed that he didn't save more lives. Kenji gathers the survivors and recounts what happened in Tachikawa and everything that he knows. The captain emphasizes the importance of returning home to their families. He offers to drive the group with his car, parked near the pier. The scene shifts to Shinjuku, Tokyo, where a homeless man sits on the street, muttering about a monster in the subway. Meanwhile, the group stuck in Shinjuku traffic discusses the barnacle kaiju. Ikuto, sitting in the passenger seat, flirts with another survivor, Midori. The other members include Gen, an older man, and a quiet individual named Mr. Gloomy. Ikuto tries to lighten the mood as Miku thanks Kenji for saving her multiple times. Suddenly, the ground shakes as another colossal kaiju emerges, a grotesque mass of flesh and mix-match body parts. The debris collapses into a massive hole as fighter jets engage the kaiju. Meanwhile, smaller creatures climb out of the hole, attacking civilians. Electric rods rise from the ground, forming a barrier around the city. The group runs towards the subway but is confronted by a giant centipede that attacks a civilian. The centipede then turns its attention to them. Ikuto grabs a brick to fight it, but it smacks his head, knocking him out. Kenji and Gen grab him, carrying him towards the subway, but the centipede moves to strike. Miku steps in between the group and the creature, armed with a brick and ready to sacrifice herself to protect Kenji and the others. However, at the last moment, a woman leaps from a nearby wall and stabs the centipede in the eye with a metal rod. The volume ends as the centipede runs away. The woman turns to the group, revealing herself to be now Shirosaki, as she asks if they're okay. But before we get to the next part, I just want to say that we now have a Discord server. So if you guys want to talk about your favorite series, get recommendations, and just connect with some like-minded fans of mine, then this is the server for you. We'll soon be hosting live community events like games, live reactions, and live readings only on the Discord server. So if you want to be involved in this, then why not scroll down and join our community? But back to the video. Now Shirosaki turns and asks if Miku Izawa is her name. This triggers a flashback to the helicopter crash, where Shirosaki and Akira survived by hiding in a large case that contained the samples. Amid the wreckage, a wounded centipede monster laid nearby. Shirosaki tried to warn Akira, but he was laying unconscious with a metal pole impaled in his side. Acting quickly, she tore her sleeve, pulled the rod out of his body, and used the fabric to wrap his wound. Shirosaki carried Akira away from the crash to an abandoned house. In the basement, she tended to him as he battled a fever. His condition worsened, and he became so weak he couldn't even drink water. In his dilemma, he whispered Miku's name. Shirosaki promised to reunite him with Miku, dedicating her life to fulfilling his wishes. To hydrate him, she puts water in her mouth and transferred it to him through a kiss. Desperate to save him, she carried him to a truck filled with military personnel and begged them to take him to a hospital. The officers agreed to take Akira on their truck, but insist that she must ride in another vehicle, assuring her that he will receive proper treatment. Although suspicious of their intentions, Shirosaki had no other option. As the trucks drove, the officers discussed an impending battle that was expected to occur much earlier than planned. Suddenly, the ground shook, forcing the truck to stop in Shinjuku. Shirosaki jumped out of the truck and encountered the fleshy kaiju. At that moment is when she saw Miku running past her and recognized her immediately. In the present, Miku asks Shirosaki how she knows her name. Shirosaki explains that she attended Tachikawa High School and that Akira is alive. She shares everything she knows and hands Miku Akira's phone, insisting that Miku should be the one to give it to him. Kenji asks if she has any information about his brother. Shirosaki admits that she knows of him but hasn't seen him since the earthquake. Their conversation is cut short when a monster appears, forcing the group to flee into the underground subway. After running for a while, the group pauses to rest, but soon they see civilians running towards them, screaming warnings about the approaching fleshy kaiju. The kaiju catches and consumes several citizens before turning its attention to the group. As they run, Mr. Gloomy presses a button to close the gate, narrowly preventing the kaiju from reaching them. Shirosaki slides under the gate just in time, while Kenji kicks off one of the creature's tentacles. The station then goes into a lockdown, but Shirosaki suggests heading to exit C7 or C8 to escape the heart of Shinjuku, and possibly get beyond the walls' boundaries. The kaiju catches up, forcing the group to run again. Ikuto tries to flirt with Shirosaki, asking for her number, even as they flee. The kaiju grabs a station worker, dissolving his body and spit out his remains. As the group nears an exit, Kenji notices it's unsafe, but a desperate worker pushes past them and attempts to escape. The worker is electrocuted by the light membrane blocking the exit, his face melting off completely. A piece of the fleshy kaiju transforms into a monstrous dog-like creature. It lunges at the group but is hit by a sign that Miku throws. As the kaiju chases her, Miku leads it towards the exit. The kaiju's head burns as it touches the electric wall, but it regenerates and grows back another head. Kenji catches Miku as she falls down the stairs, and the group splits up, running towards another exit. The kaiju charges headfirst into the electric wall, burning its upper body. Before it can regenerate, a tank appears and blows up the rest of its body. A hidden door in the floor opens, revealing a line of tanks and officers. The officers begin fighting off various creatures, disregarding the safety of remaining citizens. Nearby, a homeless man named Ujie warns officers about a monster that he saw buried underground, but they ignore him and push him aside. A creature suddenly appears behind Ujie, and as the tank prepares to fire, Kenji pushes the man out of the way. Kenji questions him about what he saw, and the man describes a massive eye staring at him from the ground. The man seems disorientated, making it difficult to get more information. Shirosaki convinces him to guide them out of Shinjuku. Despite Ikoto's skepticism, they have no other choice but to trust him. As they run, Midori begins crying, and while Ikoto tries to comfort her, he notices Mr. Gloomy standing next to a dead body and pocketing something. As officers continue battling various kaijus, the group presses on. Miku is knocked down by a mantis-like creature that prepares to attack. Shirosaki grabs a pole and bravely fights off the mantis, delivering a final blow with a metal plate. The group reaches safety, impressed by Shirosaki's combat skills, though she admits that she doesn't know how she managed it. They ask Ujie for the way out, and he tells them that they need to head to the west exit. Unfortunately, the opposite direction of where they're heading. Meanwhile, the fleshy kaiju wreaks havoc, engaging officers in combat as it moves through the city. The volume ends with the kaiju reaching a massive building where officers prepare to activate Black Rain. The commanding officer orders everyone to take their positions. Rows of officers armed with rocket launchers fill every floor of the building. As the kaiju attacks, the command is given, and a barrage of rockets is launched, obliterating the kaiju and bringing an end to its reign of destruction. As the kaiju's body spreads throughout the city, the officers celebrate another victory in the ongoing human versus kaiju war. Ujie tells the group that he will get them out of Shinjuku, explaining that a long time ago, he was in charge of the subway construction site. While digging below the west exit, he saw something on the ground, a massive eyeball staring back at him. Shortly afterward, everyone working on the project was fired, and Shirosaki speculates that the government may have known something about the monsters all along. The group runs through the destroyed city and heads under a bridge. However, they notice something lurking there, which suddenly attacks Midori. The fleshy monster is still alive and it has captured her. The monster attacks again from the opposite side, forcing the group to flee. Ikuto, unwilling to leave her behind, rushes towards the monster. Shirosaki chases after him and grabs a fallen rifle. Ikuto climbs on top of the monster trying to free Midori, but his tentacles sprout out, aiming to attack him. Shirosaki begins shooting the tentacles, providing Ikuto enough time to release Midori. Ikuto thanks Shirosaki, who tells him that they must hurry to the Tokyo government building. Meanwhile, at the government building, the officers prepare to leave, but the scattered flesh from the kaiju begins converging in front of the building, reforming into the colossal monster. In Daiba, scientists are collecting samples from the burnt barnacle monster. when it suddenly wakes from its slumber. The creature stands and blasts its way out of the wall, stepping into the city and heading towards the next area. Back in Shinjuku, Midori regains consciousness, and Ikuto expresses relief that she's alive. He tells her that Shirosaki saved her, but she insists that it was Ikuto who saved her. As they talk, the group realizes that the fleshy kaiju has grown 10 times larger. The officers fire another round of black rain, but the kaiju is unfazed. The government building launches wires to restrain the monster, and a fog begins to form beneath it. The officers announce that the fog has been invoked, signifying that the headquarters had abandoned Shinjuku. The officers call for an evacuation as Shinjuku is set for annihilation. A building transforms into a rocket and launches straight into the air, attempting to escape the destruction. However, the kaiju breaks free from its restraints and destroys the government building, killing all of the officers inside. The building-turned rocket crashes down and explodes on the kaiju. Elsewhere, 2 officers battle large centipede monsters when their body starts convulsing, blood pouring from their mouths and eyes. They collapse and die, with the centipedes also dying shortly after. The fog spreads rapidly, killing nearly everyone and everything in the city. As the fog approaches the group, Shirosaki urges them to run away. Near the underground entrance, a monster appears, but Shirosaki shoots it in the foot, causing it to fall and die from inhaling the fog. The group makes it inside but discovers it's a dead end. As the fog creeps closer, Ujie reveals a small latch and tells them to get inside. Shirosaki is the last to enter, closing the latch just before the fog reaches them. Outside, the fog envelops the entire city, melting the fleshy kaiju in the process. Inside, the group finds themselves on an abandoned subway track where Ujie had set up a makeshift home. He notes that the monster buried there is now gone. Midori screams as her flashlight reveals a pile of dead bodies. Ujie claims that he doesn't know how those bodies got there. Mr. Gloomy approaches the corpses and begins looting them for money. Jen warns him about karma, saying looting is immoral, but Mr. Gloomy dismisses the concerns. He claims that it's the right thing to do since the dead have no use for it. Lashing out, Mr. Gloomy admits that he's only with the group to increase his chances of survival, declaring that he'll let everyone else die before he does. With a deranged look, he asks if he's wrong. Suddenly, something bites into his head and multiple unknown creatures start feeding on his corpse. The creatures are revealed to be a giant cockroach with 6 maggot-like eyes. Shirosaki orders the group to follow her as more cockroaches appear, opening up their bodies to shove corpses inside and turn them into giant meatballs. The cockroach notice the group and begin chasing them. Ujie tries to retrieve something from his tent, but a cockroach charges in, knocking over a lantern and setting the area on fire. Shirosaki shoots some of the cockroaches while the others flee. However, they encounter an obstacle, a wall of human meatballs. Shirosaki tells everyone to climb it, but Midori falls onto the tracks, trapping herself in it as she is surrounded by cockroaches. Ikuto makes a torch using his shirt to scare the cockroaches away. He helps Midori up and promises to get her out quickly. As they climb, a cockroach bites Ikuto's leg. He checks on Midori and sees that there are 3 cockroaches standing behind her. Kenji, having reached the other side of the wall, calls out to Ikuto, but he tells him to go on without him. Injured and carrying Midori, Ikuto insists that they escape as the flames rage. Kenji tries to help, but Ikuto screams at him to leave, vowing to kill the cockroaches himself. Shirosaki agrees that they need to move on, and Kenji reluctantly complies. Kenji shouts that he'll meet him on the other side. As the group departs, Ikuto cradles Midori, telling her that once they've escaped, they should go on their first date. It's revealed, however, that Ikuto is holding her headless body as cockroaches devour him piece by piece. At another train station, Shirosaki opens up a latch to the surface. The volume ends with the group emerging alive in a new city, preparing for the beginning of the final arc. Creature in the second half of the story was still really enjoyable. I love seeing another perspective of the giant kaiju incident. It's like seeing the Cloverfield movie but in the perspective of people from New Jersey. I like watching the perspective of Miku and Kenji, but I don't really care about the other characters that we meet. They seem like copy and pasted characters of the last part, and we didn't get to see them as much to really care about them. I also don't really like this officer dude. He has a ton of scenes, but he's not really an interesting character or villain. Like, we already have a bunch of monsters. We don't need a boring human villain on top of that. Plus, his scenes were dragged on a lot, and it wasn't really important to the plot at all. That's why I didn't really mention most of his scenes. But everything else was really good. I like that the military is trying their best to actually fight the kaijus, and I also really like that the kaijus are attacking different cities in Tokyo. I hope we see attacks in not just Tokyo but all over Japan or even the entire world. I also really like all of the designs of the kaijus. I like the fact that Shirosaki and Akira survived. I also really like the world building when it comes to the government knowing about the kaijus before they arrived, and also what they're doing to keep control of the civilians. A lot of people don't like this series due to how it ends, and sadly I got spoiled why they don't like it. But I've enjoyed these past 8 volumes so far, and I'm both worried and pretty excited to see what happens next. And if you guys are also excited to see what happens next in the beginning of the final arc, then let's get this video to 3K likes. But thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember to join our Discord server. The link will be in the description below. If you like horror manga videos like this one, then why not scroll down and hit that subscribe button. But I'll be seeing you guys in the next video.